Morven Moments. So, Kim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi. Okay, so here we go. Morven Moments with Kim Gallagher. So we begin the story. We're focusing on 5 signers from New Jersey. So Kim, who are those 5 signers?
Well, I did look it up, like I said I would. Richard Stockton, of course, who we're mainly going to talk about today. John Witherspoon, who was the head of the college. Francis Hopkinson, John Hart, and Abraham Clark were the 5 signers from New Jersey.
And I found this image, which was published in 1819. And on the top, we see George Washington, not a signer, but we see who's flanking him.
On the left is John Hancock, who was president of the Second Continental Congress when the Declaration was signed. And over on the right-hand side is some guy from Virginia who may have had something to do with writing the Declaration. Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, that's the guy.
Jefferson, yeah. So, and if you look, what's really interesting too, all around this are the 13 colonies and their state seals. Our New Jersey state seal, which is on the on the left, 3rd seal from the top, looks pretty similar to what we have today. So, pretty iconic. So we're going to move through Richard Stockton's world. And then we're going to talk about the 4th of July, myths, reality, and 2021. Woo. Buckle up, everyone. Okay. So, what factors may have led to Richard Stockton's decision to sign the Declaration of Independence? Here we go. This you would see in.
Hello, this is Kim Gallagher, a docent at Morven, and this is another Morven moment. We're getting pretty close to July 4th, 2021, which is the 245th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. That is the 245th birthday of the United States of America. And here at Morven, we are celebrating it in particular because, of course, Morven was built by Richard Stockton, who was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. What we would like to do today is talk about something we don't normally talk about when we think about the Declaration of Independence. A lot of us take the history around the Declaration for granted, frankly. We think about the people, they met in Philadelphia, they signed Declaration, and the United States followed. The fact is, it was much more complicated than that. And the people who decided to support independence, the people like Richard Stockton, builder of the original Morven, had to make serious, high-risk decisions about their lives in order to decide to stop being a British American and becoming an American. Now, all kinds of things happened that you learned about in history during the 1760s, and the British were trying to impose taxes and so forth. But things came to a head on December 16th, 1773, and the problem was tea.
I can hear you all giggling out there. Okay, but we're gonna get serious for a moment. Here is the destruction of tea at Boston Harbor by Curator. And this, I've seen this image before, and I wanted to include it here primarily because I was interested in learning more about why there were Native Americans on the ship. Who were these guys? And this is during the day. I mean, what, all these people, it really didn't make sense to me. So we did some deep diving. And Kim, can you share, please?
Well, it didn't happen during the day. It happened at night. So Courier was, I think, just using the daytime to make a brighter picture. There were 3 ships involved, over 300 big cases of of tea that were valued at the time to about, say, 10,000 pounds, depending on who you read. Now, the business about Native Americans, the guys who did this were called the Sons of Liberty, which was a sort of a radical pro independence group. Mostly young men, actually, or young to middle-aged men. And basically they disguised themselves as Native Americans to minimize the likelihood that they would be caught. In fact, of all the people that, of the dozens of men who were involved in this, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie, but I think only one guy was actually arrested.
Right.
It was a great way to avoid being recognized.
So all this was going on. And well, as part of America, as part of Richard Stockton's world, and we find out a little bit more about Richard now.
This is Richard Stockton. This is the man who built the original Morven. This is the original reason why Morven is famous, because this is the man who signed the Declaration of Independence, along with 55 other individuals in 1776. Now, Richard Stockton was originally from Princeton. He graduated from the College of New Jersey in 1748. When it was still in Newark, before it came to Princeton. He trained to be a lawyer. And by the time that the revolutionary events were starting to occur in the mid-1760s, he was already well established as a lawyer. He was an affluent landowner. And in fact, in just a few years, towards the end of the 1760s, he was actually part of the royal administration of New Jersey, serving as a Supreme Court justice and on the royal council of the royal governor, and the royal governor was William Franklin, the son of Benjamin Franklin. So this was one of the New Jersey elite at the time that the troubles were beginning in the Americas. So in the 1760s, there were various acts that the British passed, and that's when the protesting began. As I showed you with the anachronistic tea bag, when we started out. In 1773, the Boston Tea Party occurred, and the British reacted strongly and badly in an effort to isolate Boston from the rest of the colonies. In so doing, they drove the colonies together, and that's what prompted formation of the First Continental Congress and ultimately the Second Continental Congress. Now, where does Richard Stockton fit into this? A member of the royal administration? Well, he was also an influential person in this general area, not just New Jersey, but in Philadelphia also. He was talking to people. There was a conversation going on around the colonies as to what to do about Great Britain and the relationship with Great Britain. And he was part of that. And he was for part of the time, actually serving in the royal administration, but also serving on some of the committees of correspondence and safety and so forth that the Patriots set up, which was important in carrying out this conversation about where do we go from here. Now, the Americans really had to do three things to get themselves to the point of declaring independence. The first was to think of themselves as Americans, not just as Englishmen in America, and also to think of themselves as not just New Jerseyans or Pennsylvanians or men from Massachusetts or South Carolina, but as part of a larger nation, a larger country that could be called America. And that was happening over, actually slowly and surely over the decades, and started to really coalesce in the 1760s and into the early 1770s, not in small part because the British pushed us into uniting that way. Second, the sovereignty of Parliament was the biggest political issue, the biggest political difference between the colonies and Great Britain. What had to happen is that Americans had to decide that Parliament had no authority to not only set taxes, but to set any laws in the Americas. That it was the local assemblies, locally elected, that should be responsible. What many Americans were looking for, including Richard Stockton, was not independence right up to 1775, but was looking for dominion status, so that Parliament called the shots in Great Britain and the assemblies called the shots in the colonies. There was a third element, and this is a tougher one for us to appreciate now in 2021. This is in the 1770s. Almost everywhere in the world, people were subjects of a king, a queen, a czar, a czarina, a shogun, an emperor. There was a bond between the king, the monarch, and the king's subjects. The ruler and the ruled were bound together by a birth bond, really. And to break that bond was a very difficult thing to do, and one that all of those people that we're talking about right now, and Richard Stockton is our example, what all of those people were trying to figure out how to do. There was one thing that happened in January 1776, at the same time that Richard Stockton's daughter was marrying Benjamin Rush, at the same time that the colonies got the news that the king had basically declared war on the colonies. At that time, January 10th, 1776, this pamphlet was published, Common Sense, only 46 pages long at the time. And in it, Thomas Paine, who we now think of as one of those quaint writers from 250 years ago, in a matter of weeks, tens of thousands of this pamphlet were around, had been distributed around the country. We're already in Great Britain within a couple of months, and also France. What he laid out in a manner that everyone could read, not just the elite like Richard Stockton, who were trained in law and who were participating in governmental operations and administration, but everybody. He wrote it for the artisans, the farmers, and it got their attention. And the point he made was that a king does not deserve to be a king if he tyrannizes and abuses his subjects. There is a reciprocity that's supposed to exist between the rulers and the ruled. And George III had broken that reciprocity. It's remarkable, very difficult for us today to understand how that worked, but that may have been the tipping point to get enough people to support independence. Now, to support independence, let's not neglect the fact that whether it's Richard Stockton or one of those artisans or farmers reading Common Sense, they were putting a lot on the line. One of the things that Richard was putting on the line is his family. He was married to Annis Boudinot Stockton. They had 6 children together. So it was not merely his career and his affluence. I mean, he was putting his family's life at stake as well as his own.
So much happening. And as Kim was waving a current copy of Common Sense, so I searched out a version of Common Sense, and also for us to be able to read what was on the cover of that pamphlet, as it really was a pamphlet. Number 1, of the origin and design of government in general, with the concise remarks on the English Constitution. So this is Common Sense for everyone. Of monarchy and hereditary succession. The 3rd point, thoughts on the present state of American affairs. And the 4th point, of the present ability of America with some miscellaneous reflections. So these were all covered in Common Sense. And so, as Kim said, was this pamphlet the tipping point in Richard Stockton's decision to sign the Declaration of Independence? Well, and was, Mr. Paine, Thomas Paine, a quaint guy. I thought it would be neat to show who he was. And we talked about, here he is in his portrait with his rights of man and common sense on the desk with an inkwell. So, so Kim, if you were going to have your portrait done, what would you want to have beside?
Well, I'm maybe I'm the quaint guy because, I'd have pictures of my kids and grandkids and, that sort of thing. And of course, I don't know, there's a few things that I've written over the years, but they certainly don't stand up to rights of man and common sense.
So this was, someone who had great influence. in Richard Stockton's world, in America at the time. And there were other influencers as well.
So Richard may have read Common Sense, may have been influenced by it. We can't say for sure. Unfortunately, if he wrote down anything about what he was thinking and how he was making these, life critical decisions related to Declaration of Independence or not, we just don't have those papers. They may easily have been destroyed when Princeton was occupied by the British late in 1776. We do, however, know who he must have been talking to on a regular basis during this critical period when he was making the decision to go from being a moderate who supported reconciliation to one who was prepared to put it all on the line and sign, risk everything for independence. One of the key people, obviously, would have been his wife, Annis Boudinot Stockton. She was a patriot. So was her younger brother, Elias Boudinot IV, who had actually trained to be a lawyer with his brother-in-law, Richard Stockton. Annis, who was a poet, as many of you know, was in fact in 1776 working on elegies to commemorate the lives of Joseph Warren, who was American patriot killed at Bunker Hill, and Richard Montgomery, another American patriot who was killed when in the Battle of Quebec at the end of 1775. I mean, she and her brother must have had influence on how Richard was thinking. Precisely what that influence was, that's left for speculation. There were a couple of other important people worth mentioning. One is Benjamin Rush, who became the son-in-law of Annis and Richard on January 10th, 1776, when Benjamin married their eldest child, Julia, right here in Princeton at Morven, with John Witherspoon leading the services. Benjamin Rush was courting Julia through the summer, fall, and early winter of 1775. So he came from Philadelphia frequently to visit with the family. Well, of course, the main reason was Julia, but he was also visiting with the family. And he was a very strong, independence-minded patriot. In fact, it was Benjamin Rush who gave Thomas Paine the idea to write Common Sense. In fact, he gave Common Sense its title because Thomas Paine wanted to call it something else. He was known as a very persuasive guy, and it's very hard to discount the kind of role that Benjamin Rush may have played in convincing Richard Stockton that, independence was the way to go. Other people in town, because Princeton was a real hotbed of patriotic fervor, shooting, for independence, not just reconciliation, was John Witherspoon, a good friend of Richard Stockton, who was the head of the college. Jonathan Dickinson Sargent, a younger man who had trained with Richard Stockton, who lived on a farm just half a mile from here, a place that was eventually called Constitution Hill. These were the kinds of people that Richard was dealing with day in and day out. And these were people who had made the decision and obviously contributed in some manner to the decision he ultimately made.
Thank you, Kim. And we wanted to put a face to these names. So on left, we see Dr. Benjamin Rush. And he does look pretty dapper and a guy that you probably would, listen to if he had something to say. Far right, we have Jonathan Dickinson Sargent. Not always, commonly spoken about, but again, you can see in his portrait, he's got his quill and his writings. And what else is in there, Kim?
I don't know. I'm trying to tell. Is that the Constitution?
I think it was his law books. His law books.
Well, yeah, he trained with. He's kind of famous because he wrote the first Constitution of New Jersey in 2 days, in July of 1776 at Constitution Hill. That's why it's called Constitution Hill. And he also had a house in town and a young wife and baby who a loyalist in town actually got out of Princeton just before the British occupied the town. And the British ended up burning that house down.
And to put another face on there, we have John Witherspoon, the Reverend Witherspoon in the center there, kind of dour looking guy who, speaking of around town, he was at Tusculum Farm, not far from Morven. And it's said that his wife would put a candle in the window, and when she wanted him to come home from Morven, and he could see the candle from Morven, and he would know it was time to come home. So, these were people swirling around.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning, related to the persuasiveness of Benjamin Rush, that the college really wanted John Witherspoon to be the head of, and we're trying in the late 1760s to get him to come to from Scotland. And in fact, Richard Stockton visited the Witherspoons in Scotland and tried to convince them to come. John apparently wanted to come, but Mrs. Reverend Witherspoon didn't. And it was in 1768 that Benjamin Rush visited them. And apparently he convinced her that they should come, and they did.
Very persuasive guy. So here we are. We know he was present on June 28th, 1776, when the draft declaration was presented to Congress.
So Richard Stockton made his decision. Was it influenced by common sense? Was it largely influenced by his friends, his wife, his brother-in-law, his son-in-law? We don't know for sure, and we never will. But we do know that on June 22nd, 1776, Richard Stockton agreed to be a representative of New Jersey at the Second Continental Congress. A few days later, he rode to Philadelphia, where he was present on June 28th, when the declarations, the draft declaration was presented to Congress. He participated in the debate over whether or not to declare independence. And in fact, on July 2nd, 1776, Richard Stockton was one of the 56 individuals who declared independence. Technically, they didn't really sign it till August 2nd, another little known fact. But remember, when Richard Stockton left Morven at the end of June 1776, he was putting all of this on the line. I mean, it was Morven, it was his lands, it was his family, his wife, his own life. He was putting it on the line. He had changed from a moderate who wanted reconciliation, and he changed for whatever reasons. We'll be talking about it for ages. But he did make the decision and declared for independence.
So now we get to the favorite part. Thank you, Kim. Are there any questions anyone has for us today? Because
how are we doing on time?
We're doing pretty well, thankfully. And I think we kind of covered everything. Maybe that's the reason.
Well, there's one thing. Could I mention, Debbie? June 28th is what's commemorated in that famous John Trumbull painting, a copy of which we have at Morven, and that's when the Committee of Five, who wrote the Declaration, delivered the first draft to Congress, and then. That it was modified and edited and so forth. And the final draft was accepted on July 4th. That's what actually happened on July 4th. The vote for independence was July 2nd. The signing actually happened a month later. Now, one of the things that happened the day after June 28th, when this whole process of getting the declaration finalized, on June 29th, a couple of dozen British ships along with General William Howe, showed up in Staten Island. And they were the first of hundreds of ships and thousands of troops that were beginning their re-invasion of America, which really got moving at the end of August. So this whole business about things being on the line, we're not just looking back and seeing that they were on the line. I mean, things were happening right then and there. And it was people knew what was going on. When he was in Philadelphia, Richard Stockton and the rest of the members of the Second Continental Congress were notified that the British were arriving. So they had, if they were going to declare independence, they had to do it then. So they did.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. And other things that are happening on the 4th of July this year, we have a special guest to tell us more about that. Today, we have Princeton Mayor Mark Freda, who is with us to do our big 4th of July launch and coin reveal. Mayor, are you there?
I am here.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
with us today. We're very
Welcome,
excited
Mark.
to have you.
Thank you.
So I just want to make sure everyone can see you. And do you have something that you want to show us?
You know, I do have something I want to show everyone. So I have a very lovely commemorative coin, two-sided. So let me try to hold it up close enough.
Ooh, pretty.
No surprise, right? That the one side actually, of course, says Morven and has a very nice outline of the building. And the flip side, there we go, shows that it's, in case you didn't know, that Morven's in Princeton, New Jersey, and that is on the flip side of the coin.
That's
So it's a very lovely gold coin that I happened to take out of the protective case, but normally I would have left in, but I took it out just so you could see it very well.
Thank you, Mayor.
My
Yeah, and
pleasure.
so all you have to do, you got to have one because you're special and you're our mayor, and we're so thankful to have you with us. And everyone, we have the first 300 families or groups who join us and our partners for a 10-day long 4th of July celebration. They can earn that custom coin, and we're so happy to be doing this in partnership with the Historical Society of Princeton, the Princeton Battlefield Society, and Rockingham State Historic Site. So basically, in the town topics and on the back page of US 1 and on our website, you can find the scavenger hunt, and you can do the scavenger hunt. And there's each place has clues, and you have through July 8th, and then bring those forms to our museum shop at 55 Stockton Street, and we will check them out and be happy to give you a coin. So if you want to be like the mayor, be cool like the mayor, and have a really cool coin, you'll join
There's 299 left.
yeah, we have 299 more for all of you. So,
And I do want to say, Debbie, that we've done some test hunting, and the whole hunt takes about 2.5 to 3 hours. So you can spend a whole day in Princeton and stop and have a bite to eat or an ice cream or something like that around town, or you can do it over several days. Your journey is up to you.
thank you, Jill. That was Jill Barry, our executive director at Morven. And again, thank you all for your patience and endurance today with our technical difficulties, but it was well worth it. I think it was a wonderful program, and especially to have the wrap up with Mayor Freda and Jill Barry. So thank you both so much. And we'll see you all on the hunt. Look for happy 4th of July, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Happy 4th of July. Thank you.